Dear friends, dear Sangha, today is April 11th, 2020. I'm on the Moonlit Crane Zenda on Manitoulin Island, and just another brief Dharma talk to keep us practicing together and to try to maintain a sense of community, and that we are practicing Zen in this time where the Sangha is separated. Everybody is staying in their own homes, and we are unable to get together and sit together. So it was a little bit difficult to decide what topic I should talk about today. But then I heard something that I didn't know. I learned something new the other day in one of the dokusans I had. And supposedly there is a type of yoga. There's a kind of yoga that is practiced in India, in which the mental discipline or the technique of the practice is to say no to everything. This is what I heard. And I can very well imagine there being such a practice in India, which has a very rich tradition of many different practices developed through the centuries. Anyway, so there is this kind of yoga in which you say no to everything. And as all things, it can be something rather crude at the beginning and something rather sophisticated for those who are maybe accomplished in that kind of practice. But then afterwards I was thinking, and I thought, why couldn't there be a kind of yoga, a kind of practice in which you say yes to everything? So it would be a different kind of practice, a different kind of mental discipline, in which you actually say yes to everything. And it would be interesting if those two groups, people who say no to everything and people who say yes to everything, they can meet and maybe compare notes and have some discussion or debate about which way is better. But anyway, it's a kind of funny thought. Of course, neither of these practices is a Buddhist practice, and this is what I want to talk about today. Our practice is to say yes to some things and to say no to other things. Namely, we have to be able to discriminate clearly and wisely between things which are helpful and things which are not helpful. And we should cultivate those things which promote certain mental states, such as understanding, peace, and so on. And we should discourage and let go of those things which promote and encourage and cultivate further suffering, aggression, prejudice, jealousy, pride, and so on. So this much is very clear. What is difficult is to clearly differentiate. And what is difficult is be able to make good choices sometimes. And when the situations are extreme, as it may be now, we're living through a quite unusual situation, sometimes those choices we make, it actually may be a matter of life and death, actually. So being able to differentiate very clearly is an aspect of our practice. So now the question arises, of course, how does that relate to meditation practice and to meditation on the cushion? When we are sitting in Zazen, this is the practice of non-discrimination. When we are sitting in Zazen, we are sitting in non-duality. It's not even that we are sitting in non-duality, we are non-duality. And this is important to understand. It is important from the perspective of technique, but it is also important so that we can differentiate, so that we do not confuse conceptual practice with actual practice. For example, conceptual practice would be knowing something about non-duality, being able to understand non-duality, or being able to see a non-dualistic point of view. Whereas the actual practice would be actually being non-duality. Being Zazen. Not so much sitting in Zazen, but being Zazen. So then, this kind of non-discriminating mind, the mind of vast peace and spaciousness, that simply doesn't have the power to discriminate between anything at all, but is kind of eternally at peace. This mind informs and instructs us, and our ability to clearly differentiate between good and the bad, to make good choices, this ability is informed, inspired, guided by the mind of non-differentiation. It is a little bit paradoxical to say that, but you can think of it like this. When we sit in Zazen, the state of Zazen, the practice of Zazen, the being of Zazen generates tremendous wisdom and compassion. And then, if we bring that along into a situation which requires us to make use of that wisdom and compassion, that we naturally do so, and in those moments we can differentiate clearly. We are able to make good choices, and we are able to cultivate things in our daily lives which promote naturally the cause of wisdom and compassion. So this is a kind of a relationship between on the cushion practice and off the cushion practice. So this was a kind of one message I had for you for this week. In this time where we have to make, as any time, we have to make good choices. And we have to be able to discriminate clearly what is to be done. Because ultimately, it is our actions and it is the actualization. Our actions are the actualization of our practice on the cushion. So as a further extension of that, I want to speak a little bit about our current predicament, that people are being basically isolated in their own homes. And I just want to make sure that we are able to clearly see what it is that we are doing to ourselves. Are we slowing down when we are at our homes? And maybe this doesn't apply to those of you who are working right now, because I suspect you're busier than ever. If you are one of the essential industries or you're a health provider, I suspect you're very, very busy, and you may be working double shifts and so on. But for those of you whose lives have been completely disrupted, and you're working and you're not working, you're staying at home and you have very little social interaction, and now you have all this free time and nothing to do with it, perhaps there is a need for some clarity in how to make a good use of that time. And I just want to make sure that if we are going to use this time to slow down, that we are actually slowing down and that we are not shutting down. There's a big difference between the two. When we slow down, the whole universe around us slows down, and we enter a kind of a magical place, if you will. It is a place of total creativity and possibilities. It is a place in which we can notice things. It is a place where we can be alive and present. It is a place in which we can thrive. So even though our lives have been disrupted, that does not mean that we can thrive in spite of that, even though we are locked in our houses. Shutting down, on the other hand, is basically just coping with enormous stress. And sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes the only thing to do is to cope. But if we persist in that for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, it will leave permanent scars. And we will find it difficult to reintegrate ourselves, and we will find it difficult to come back to practice. So it may seem like Zen and the Sangha activities should be we don't have time and energy for anything like that right now. We are just trying to take care of ourselves and be kind to ourselves and just kind of shut down the world. I'm not sure that this is a good strategy in the long run. For example, let's say that you are a writer by profession, or maybe it is just something you do as a hobby. This is a time, there's absolutely no reason right now that you cannot be writing. But just maybe we need to find inspiration in different place. For example, if you can't write, if there's no inspiration, if there's no some outpouring of creativity, it's a good chance that we are just shutting down. We are trying to kind of just protect ourselves. And ultimately what that means is that we are just giving in to fear. So if you're an artist, you should absolutely be able to create art. If you're a writer, you should be able to write. If you're a parent, you should be able to spend a really quality time with your children and just really happy time and carefree time. So this is just kind of a difference, just some thoughts on a different way of dealing with this situation. We should make an effort. We should make an effort to thrive, even though the circumstances may be difficult. And we should make every effort to stay connected and not to isolate ourselves emotionally and socially, even though physically we may have to stay isolated. It is basically a difference, this difference between slowing down and shutting down is a kind of difference between opening up and aggression. Shutting down, it's an act of aggression. Really, we're just trying to keep the world away. We're just kind of entering into a shell. And this is not the way of Zen. It is very interesting, because solitude is such a important component of traditional Zen practice, because it is a place in which we can minimize our distractions. And sometimes maybe we can talk about the joys of solitude. But solitude is not entering a bunker, trying to feel ourselves feel safe. Solitude is really just working really, really well at limiting our distractions and exploring reality, and just pacifying our restlessness. And sometimes the easiest way to do that is in a kind of solitude. Of course, in a sesshin, we are practicing together, but there is kind of solitude there because we are not paying attention to what is going on with anybody else. So even though we are sitting together and supporting each other, there's a kind of solitude in the middle of the sesshin. So there's a kind of solitude. Now, in your own home, especially for those of you who are living alone, but we should be able to clearly differentiate between opening up and shutting down. I think it is very important. This solitude and slowing down, it opens up a space. It opens up a space to communicate with reality. This is what I meant. When we slow down, we kind of enter into a magical space. But it's not, I don't want you to misunderstand. This magical space is the place, where the grass is green and the sky is blue. It is not some other place. So, all too often, we use our Zen practice in order to protect ourselves, to protect some idea that we have about who we are, or how we should be, or what is real. I think we should use our Zen practice in order to expose ourselves, to expose our own prejudices to ourselves. So, I think that is a worthwhile thing to consider now that you maybe have some extra time. And for those of you who are really, really busy, maybe you are a nurse or a doctor, and maybe it's a little bit overwhelming, maybe every 4 hours try to take 15 minutes to slow down and just collect yourself and try to refresh yourself a little bit. Maybe 20 minutes is too long, you cannot afford so much time, and maybe 10 minutes is too short. But maybe 15 minutes we can find, 15 minutes here and there in the day, and if you're working double shift, maybe every 4 hours you can find 15 minutes to try to slow down a little bit, to try to refresh yourself a little bit, so that we don't get too overwhelmed, and we can be as helpful as we can be in this difficult situation. So this is just some thoughts for this week. I hope that you're well. I hope that you are doing well. And I hope that this our short Dharma talk has kind of hit the mark with you, and that you can kind of relate to it in some way and find it useful. Thank you very much, and I'm hoping to talk to you soon.